Hey everyone, welcome to Dr. Frank's Finance World. I am Dr. Frank the Bank because I try to teach you something about finance so you can make a little money. Please be sure to subscribe or get notifications. These videos will push us over 70 for our website, and neat new stuff comes down the pipeline all the time. And look in the notes in the future for links and other websites. So the net present value part 1, video number 2, we're going to talk about internal rate of return and payback. Internal rate of return is the discount rate that forces the present value of the inflows to exactly equal the outflow or the money that you first put in. In other words, IRR is a special case of net present value where it will exactly equal zero. So what's interesting is I haven't changed anything in my calculator. So if I go back, you can see I still have the cash flows from the long problem, and they're still in there. So all I have to do, and this is the beautiful thing, all I have to do to solve for internal rate of return is there's the cash flow button I put them in. There's the NPV button I just solved for, net present value for. Right next to it is the internal rate of return. It doesn't automatically calculate it for you, but if you calculate it, you can actually see that we indeed get 18.125, or their approximation of 18.13%. It is interesting to note that I can turn off and on the calculator, and all this information is still stored in there. So that's a good lesson to keep in mind as well. That ultimately means this project on a standalone basis would make us 18.13%. So how are the internal IRR similar to a bond's yield to maturity? I want to take a step out in the process here to show you that, yes, we may use different keys of the calculator, but it's actually doing the same exact thing. So if we were to put this in as if this was a bond, let's take a bond and put it into the cash flow function of the calculator. So first things first, let's solve for the bond. So I'm going to clear this here and just get out of it, period. That isn't clearing, it's just clearing the screen. And then I'm going to clear the time value money function of my calculator. And this is a 10-year bond with a 9% annual coupon, so it's $90 is the payment. 0.09 times 1,000. Face value is 1,000. That is the future value. And it sells for $11.34.20. So make sure we put a negative in front of it, otherwise we'll get an error 5 as the cash outflow present value right now. And when we compute the I/Y, we'll get 7.082%. So let's do exactly the same problem in the cash flow function. First off, I'm going to clear out what our cash flows were before. And the 1134 is what you're out right now. So the 1134.2 negative is the money you'd be out right now to buy the bond. The cash flow that we're going to get is $90. So $90 is the cash flow. We could put this in for 9 times and then get the other one on the 10th year, but let's see here. Did it do that one? No, it did not do that one. Okay, so it did not get the $90. Sorry. So there's the $90 and enter. It actually occurs 9 times because the bond has the 9 coupons. And then the last year you get your $90 and your $1,000 back. So the frequency this time is going to be 9. It's good to see a problem's a little different in that regard. The second cash flow is actually your $1,000 back plus the 90 that you're going to get. If you actually wrote out a bond, that's what it would look like. That's only going to occur once. And if we go over here and say, what is the internal rate of return of that project? 7.082%. It's exactly what you did the other way. So I'm just trying to reemphasize that processes are used across different topics or different things that we do in finance, but the numbers are ultimately and the processes are the same. Okay, so rationale for internal rate of return, you want to make sure that whatever you pay for your money is less than what you actually make for doing the project. The project's return exceeds its cost, then it will actually it'll pay your cost plus leave something for the shareholders. So the decision rules, and that's what they call the formal name of it here, but if the project earns you more than what your money costs, you would accept it, and by definition would have a positive net present value. If the internal rate of return was less than WACC, then the project would lose money because you're not covering your cost of funds. So anyway. In this case, if they're independent for the S and the R or L, you would accept them both. But because the internal rate of return for the short-term project is greater than the long-term project, if they are mutually exclusive, you would only accept the short-term project. Interestingly, and I love this kind of stuff out there, you can look at your different costs of capital and figure out where you're going to make money or not. At a 0% cost of capital, the long-term project makes more than the short-term project because it's not being penalized for the cost of funds. At 5%, the same thing happens, but at 10% WACC or cost of your money, the long-term project starts to underperform the short-term project, and you can start to see the importance of getting those cash flows earlier. At 15%, it still is positive. At 20%, it is actually a negative return, negative net present value. So you know that the internal rate of return, where it is 0, is somewhere between 15 and 20%, and indeed it was a little over 18%. And just by virtue of the fact that you can still make something for the short-term project at a 20% cost of money, we know for a fact that the short-term project earns over 20% as an internal rate of return. So why can you get different outcomes, if you will, or different answers, I guess you would say, if you're using net present value versus internal rate of return? And ultimately, it's the size difference in the projects can make a difference. Small projects tend to free up your money sooner, and they tend to end up with a higher return on them, so relatively speaking. So high WACC favors small projects. And then finally, a timing difference, the project with faster payback, and I'll show you what this means in a second. But the one that has earlier cash flows essentially provides more money back in the early years, is considered to be many times the above average project. So that's why the NPV of the short term, get your money back or more of it back sooner, is higher than it is for the longer one. So they do have certain assumptions, not a huge big deal, but something you should probably know. The net present value assumes their cash flows are reinvested at your cost of your money. The internal rate of return says you're going to get whatever the project would earn you. And truthfully, you can't depend on the internal rate of return as a return. So ultimately, because of that, NPV is the best method. What is payback period? I call that the farmer's method. It's just, how long does it take me to basically get my money back? I think that's a really important topic when you think about it. And the sooner you get your money back, the better, right? And you calculate it by taking your inflows and subtracting it from your original investment until you finally get to 0. So what does that look like? Here we have project L here, where you're waiting longer to get your money back. And you can see that there you were $100 in the hole. You earned $10 the first year, so now you're only $90 in the hole. 100 minus 10. So you got 90 in the hole. Then you earned $60, so now you're still $30 in the hole. And then the last year you earned more than paying yourself back. So what it turns out to be is the 2 years that you didn't earn the money back, and then a ratio of the money that you earned versus what you still had to pay back. So 30 divided by 80, somewhere in that year you're earning 80, you're going to get your $30 back. It's actually, it would be 0.375, to be honest. That's why the number comes out the way it does. But basically, it's a ratio of what is still owed versus what you earn that would exceed it the next year. And so the payback for the short term was only 1.6 years, which is why it turned out to be a better project. Anyway, strengths and weaknesses provides an indication of project's risk and how soon you get your money back. It's easy to calculate. This is for payback. The problem is it ignores the cost of your money, and most importantly, ignores cash flows occurring after the cashback or payback period. In other words, if we had gone to this one and we had nothing year 4 for the short-term project, but we had, let's say, $1 billion in year 4, it would still say the first one was the superior project. So the fact that it doesn't include cash flows after that is a problem. Anyway, there's no relationship between a given payback and investor wealth maximization. It's just a way to look at how fast you get your money back. So please don't forget to send emails with comments and suggestions, especially Ask Dr. Frank. I'm going to try to build that out next. So have a great day. We'll catch you later. There's problems on net present value next.